Good evening, my fellow classmates. It has been a joy to experience this class with you, and I join you from my kitchen on Sunday evenings, where I have spent the past 8 weeks after getting 3 children and a spouse in bed to review and reflect upon the week's materials. For this final paper, I had started the process by wanting to do a cross-cultural analysis using Italy, a country I have visited before and a country that if I was able to disappear anywhere, that is where you would find me. However, due to recent career changes, I find myself in an independent school or private school setting where I have a large number of Pakistani families who are seeking exceptional education opportunities for their children, and thought that my unfamiliarity with their culture and wanting to understand more and more of the legacy and the tradition behind their family, that I would shift my study to Pakistan and understand the cross-cultural differences, but also the similarities between Pakistan and the United States. And that leads me to presenting to you reviews of my paper and this presentation. So getting with the presentation. The study you'll see in these coming slides essentially just breaks down the similarities and the differences using Hofstede's model. And I would have liked to have explored more of our cultural models, but frankly, as we got into the latter models in our class, Pakistan was not one of those countries that was featured. And I found myself using India as a proxy because there are some cultural similarities. They are neighbors. There is tension there. And if anything, using India as a proxy helped me understand the region similarities, but also the differences that cause those diplomatic tensions between the countries. This, what I found most interesting is how Hofstede, his power index, the individualism, the masculinity, the uncertainty avoidance, and long-term orientation really revealed ways that we can understand our connections to Pakistan better, but also we can understand why there are differences. As you can see, there are some striking differences between Pakistan and the United States. Power distance, not as not as much of an anomaly, but the individualism was amazing. I was struck over and over and over again how Pakistan does not view nearly as much on the I continuum. There is no I. It is a we. It is an us. It is a community. It is a family. It is a group. That was very striking. Masculinity was not as high as I had thought it would be. Uncertainty avoidance, you'll see that Pakistan is significantly higher than the United States. Long-term orientation, I do think because there's a longer tradition in that region, age-old, generation after generation, is simply longer than the United States. I think they are more oriented towards realizing there is more ahead. There's a longer orientation. There's a bigger picture than we in the United States might be conditioned to. And then the religious and ethical statutes that take place in India, you'll see that the United States is at 68, whereas Pakistan is 0. There are moral compasses that are in place there that hinder far greater behaviors than we will find in the United States. I appreciated Hofstede's work at IBM. I have moved from the local church into academia, and I've appreciated the way that so much of Hofstede's studies came out of corporate America with his study at IBM and how it originated from that corporate model. Some of the highlights from my review between the United States and Pakistan, the issue of overpowering and underpowering each other. There's more potential for rivalry between the countries. There is a public and a private wealth of individuals, and whether it be putting up appearances or living into a legacy of a family or a group, it can really affect the harmony that is taking place between one another. It can affect the quality of individuals within that group. Just because the group is wealthy or the community is wealthy or the family is wealthy doesn't necessarily mean that it trickles down to certain individuals, but they are to hold up the appearance of the family wealth. The United States has a higher rating of masculinity, that they need to appear stronger, which I was frankly surprised by. That financial success is more important here than there. Raymond talked about how strong and tolerant the United States is in terms of the importance of appearing successful, not only to compete but to win, and that success equals growth more here than in Pakistan. That people working at well-known places here, get more attention for what they have achieved, and how the independence factor for individuals, to move here, to move there, to do whatever it takes to succeed, is a system that is far more dominant here in the United States than it is in Pakistan. Pakistan, people are more likely to dig in, to stick closer to home, to stick closer to a supportive environment, to make it work, rather than looking out for number one and doing what it takes for them to move up the corporate ladder. I found that to be quite fascinating. When we start looking at the masculinity and femininity, the difference, as we've said, is that the harmony is valued. The harmony of a family is valued much higher in Pakistan than statistics will show from the cultural analysis of the United States. It doesn't mean that in Pakistan there is a lack of attention to money, to success, but it simply doesn't compare to how important money and success are in the United States. In Pakistan, family values are given a higher preference versus career-defining decisions. It's not that career is not important. It's simply asking a question of what is more important, the family values of the group versus the individual successes. And this is one of the areas I found to be most fascinating, especially when we look at the headlines that take place in the news, or the conflicts, the cultural differences, understanding the tensions of diplomatic relationships, that the group being more dominant than the individual. And as the United States comes across with more individualized opinions, I can understand some of the tensions that I have seen. Individualism in Pakistan scores at 14. Individualism and collectivism being two separate things. There is an interdependence of people living in a society that, yes, they are concerned about their personal growth, but in Pakistan, it was more of a communal growth. How does this affect our legacy? How does this affect those we are surrounded by? A far greater cultural awareness, or maybe not cultural awareness, but a cultural involvement, cultural investment than in the United States. Pakistan is so low on the individuality rankings because the family values are so dominant. You'll see here that the numbers are very high in terms of our society is inclined towards liberty, towards not being tied to a group, towards getting out on our own, and giving equality. The importance that I've also found of that interdependency is that the state having enough resources to take care and help its seniors, and lifting the responsibility off the people so that they are able to focus on their careers better. Our American culture is actually not known for having a really strong family culture, so less expectations are given towards caring for others in order to have a more confident individual. Also, there is the idea that Americans are famous for being able to successfully invent new things and thinking outside the box, because individuals have been given the power to think this through. Now, that means that as an individualized culture, we are spending more time, thinking ahead without looking back. And that is one thing I took away from Pakistan, is that they are spending time looking back, caring for the village, caring for the least of these, whether they view it as a Christian principle or not. There is more energy being spent focusing on those behind. In trying to wrap up, power distance, the United States is at 45, whereas Pakistan is almost 55%. That fairly similar. One of those things that, what does society think about new ideas and those that are different in terms of what's been happening in the past, showing that there is still a resistance to change that will take place. Both of our societies need to be more susceptible to welcoming new ideas. I think the U.S. has a little bit of an edge here, where the U.S. is pretty much the kind of place where measures are not taken and newer ideas are not pressed to go away. Pakistan, though, has a larger barrier that prevents people from thinking outside the box because it's simply never been done that way before. The long-term orientation is people attaching themselves to history. And this, as I've said before, Pakistan has such a rich heritage, and who they are and where they have come from has such deep roots. And it's not that the United States doesn't care. It is that Pakistan just simply digs in deeper. The only way to know the road ahead is to know the way you've come. And I think sometimes the United States is just like, forget about the way we've come, let's keep moving forward, forget about it, and move on. That's a vast generalization, but it's what I consider to be an ample comparison. Then we get into indulgence, and the cultural and moral, parts of Pakistan lead far more strict and conservative moral and ethical values that frown upon behaviors of indulgence or giving in to desires than the United States culture would have. The scriptures I pulled from this are Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male and female, for you are all one in Jesus Christ. Corinthians 9:21. To those outside the law, I became as one outside the law, that I might win those outside the law. What I took from these is that while there are differences, I see some striking similarities. And between these two countries, or any nation for that matter, there is a level of respect, a level of learning, and some gleaning that can take place that Pakistan can learn from progressive natures of the United States, but also I think the rich heritage and sticking to the community and understanding where we've been are lessons that we can learn from Pakistan. The cultural dimensions, as prescribed by Hofstede, have clearly explained the reasons as to why these ranks, are the way they are. And I think using Hofstede's model, we can really glean some very valuable ways to understand our current setting as the United States of America through the lens of Pakistan, through headlines, through international stories, through our interactions in our local community with Pakistani individuals. The value of the inner circle of family is something I have truly gleaned from this.